I want to, first of all, thank everybody here at Palo Alto who's made me feel so welcome. And it's been nice spending a few days with friends, and I see many familiar faces from different parts of not just the Palo Alto congregation, but from the greater congregation whom I might have met at Ananda village. So it's nice to be here, and this is an interesting time of the year. I don't know if you realize it or not, but since the gentleman who did the reading talked about Lahiri Mahashaya demystifying yoga, and we'll talk about that just a little bit. But his own life seems very mysterious to me for this simple fact, and perhaps you noticed it. When was his Mahasamadhi? So on the 26th. When was his birthday? On the 30th. Somehow he was born 4 days after his Mahasamadhi, which is not the way most people come and go. They are born first and then they pass on. But anyway, the years are different. It's just that the Mahasamadhi comes 4 days before his birthday. So it always surprises me that at the start of the week we celebrate or honor somebody's passing, and then 4 days later we are honoring his birth. But as we were talking about yesterday, we had a class on Patanjali that this is classic of the Indian way of sharing, that it's not linear. It's always, you start somewhere, you go somewhere, you come back. And the example I was giving yesterday was, those of you who have read the autobiography of a yogi, there's a chapter, An Experience in Cosmic Consciousness, where Yogananda talks about the highest state of self-realization possible, samadhi. And you'd imagine you'd build the intensity, and the next chapter would be even more deep. But it's called the cauliflower robbery. And it's about, it's basically a joyful chapter. It has nothing to do necessarily with the previous chapter where he describes this complete expansion of consciousness. But the principle here, as Yogananda always used to say, is a self-realized soul is a self-realized soul. It takes a saint to know a saint. It's not always easy by outward perception to realize a saint's high stature. In fact, in Lahiri Mahashaya's own life, his own stature as a saint was so hidden that most of his family members didn't know that he was liberated. In the autobiography of a yogi, it talks about his own wife who did not know for a long time that she was married to somebody who was completely free. She thought, here's an ordinary husband, a spouse. But it turned out he was far greater. And in fact, in his own family, once somebody was told they had an affliction or they had some karma that had to be worked out. So he went to an astrologer. And the astrologer told him, well, a part of what you need to do to get rid of this karma is you have to go and bow down to a saint or something, do something or the other which concerns a saint. And so the fellow, there was no Google at that time, he inquired high and low, and he was in the northern half of India. Finally, he located a saint on the southern tip of India. He was going to make that 5-month or 3-month journey, whatever it was at that time, to go find that saint and get his blessings, when somebody finally told him, don't you know you have one in your own family? He says, in my own family? Who's that? Well, and they pointed to Lahiri Mahashaya. And so, sure enough, then he didn't have to make that long journey. But his life was very, very hidden from the masses. He was cremated. As you know, householders in Indian tradition are cremated. And yogis, or those who have taken formal vows of renunciation, they are not cremated, because it's assumed that when you take the vow of renunciation, you're cremating all attachments anyway. But he had asked specifically that his body not be cremated, that be buried. But the tradition, the custom was so strong that even a self-realized soul such as him had to bow to the custom. But this is all a play of consciousness, as we know, so it all adds to the sweetness and the richness of the story that makes this planet go. This topic, in surrender lies victory, it's important for us to remember. We are talking about inner victories. We are talking about inner surrender. Because oftentimes we can equate, as I said, the inner signs are not always visible. You have to be with a refined soul for a long enough time to know their refined stature. They don't advertise it. And Lahiri Mahashaya has always been one of my favorites. We have so many masters here that it's not always fair to call somebody a favorite. And especially as a monk myself, and him being the only householder, it might seem funny to call him a favorite, but I like him because he breaks the image we have in our mind of what a liberated soul must be like. He's not. I remember I was few years ago trying to write an article on selfies. And so I was looking up something on Google, and somehow, for some reason, all these search results were how to have a broad jaw, how to have a strong jaw. I don't know, probably it's a big thing these days for people to have when they take selfies. I have no idea. But for some reason, Google was popping those searches back at me. Well, Lahiri Mahashaya doesn't have a broad jaw. He's going bald, if you see. And you only see him right up till here in these photos. But if you see the full photo, he's pretty plump, if I may say that. The reason I say this is, I often tell people, I teach a lot online. And one of the final classes is on right diet, which is very important. We have to take care of this body. But I always tell people, remember, the goal of life is not to have flat abs, it's to flatten your ego. And that's what Lahiri Mahashaya did. He was roly-poly, but he had flattened his ego. Many people have flat abs and roly-poly egos, as you know. And I'm having a little bit of fun here, but he brings things into good perspective. It's inner victories we are talking about. It's inner surrender that we are talking about. And as we go along our spiritual journeys, remember, as Yogananda often used to say, God watches the heart. Nothing else, quite literally, nothing else. Not the amount you tithe, not the amount you donate, not the certifications and the hours you spend in meditation. He watches the heart. But the more we can refine our heart and use these techniques of yoga to help us do that, we can get there faster. The blessing of yoga is it's step by step, it's universal, and it allows us to perfect our surrender. We are trying to surrender our hearts, feelings, our minds, still them and offer them into the infinite, and it's not easy to do so. And here, since I'm here in Ananda, Palo Alto, which is Silicon Valley, the hotbed of innovation, I'm remembering a historical example, which, I saw. It was interesting. I've been here after many years, and the proliferation of Teslas is very interesting to see, and it's there to see. There were very few a few years ago, but there are many more now. But the classic example was Edison versus Tesla. And those of you who know, Edison invented the light bulb, and Tesla invented the apparatus that even today supplies electricity, alternating current, and how to transmit electricity from power stations all the way to the sockets in your homes. Most people know more about Edison than about Tesla. It's just how it is. Because Edison knew the ways of the world. He knew how to create a company. He knew how to have patents. He knew how to hire people, run advertisement campaigns. Tesla was eccentric. And if you're eccentric, you don't necessarily become as famous as somebody who knows how to flow with the world in addition to being a good scientist. Now, Edison invented the light bulb in a particular way, pretty much by trial and error experiments. He kept trying one filament after the other until he hit on tungsten and the right atmosphere that surrounds it, inert gas, and he saw that it became luminescent. It gave light, and that's how the electric bulb was invented. Now, Tesla, he knew the laws that governed electricity. He had trained scientifically. And so, he could get to his results far quicker because he could discard many of the options that Edison would have gone through trial and error methods to come to the conclusion of what works. That's how we realized that if we are to use electricity efficiently, we have to use alternating current, which switches polarity. And he tried to tell this to Edison, who had no interest in that complex mechanism where you first have current that's at low voltage, then you step it up to high voltage, then you step it down to low voltage, and then this, and then you convert it into direct current, which then powers your devices, which use direct current anyway. They don't use alternate current. He said, this is never going to work. And Tesla said, this is the only thing that's going to work. And so they fought wars. There was this whole discreditation campaign, which discredited Tesla to a degree. But Tesla simply kept demonstrating that his solutions worked. And today, that's what we have here. It's the alternating current that supplies all the planet, basically. Even though Tesla might not be as well remembered for what he did to help us. The reason I'm saying this story is, if we try the trial and error way of trying to focus our concentration, it's hard. If we try to surrender our will, our heart's devotion, aspiration, our minds to the divine, just sitting there and saying we are going to somehow do it, a few people can. You come with past life tendencies. Some people come with tremendous powers of concentration. And it's possible for them to go very deep. An example was Lahiri Mahashaya. Remember, he first got liberation, if you read the story pretty much, and then he got Kriya Yoga. Again, as I say, in the lives of the masters, it's not linear. I was saying he was sort of born after his Mahasamadhi, 4 days after his Mahasamadhi. But if you read the chapter in Autobiography of a Yogi, Materializing a Palace in the Himalayas, it's very evident that he didn't need Kriya for his self-realization. It was just a part of his life to signify that this technique is now being shared with a wider group of people on this planet. But using science, we can get to that same goal quickly. And the reason I'm mentioning all this is also because we are trying to honor Lahiri Mahashaya this week. And his powerful contribution was demystifying yoga, yes, but also giving that specific technique which allows us to interiorize our consciousness. And here's a fascinating bit on Kriya Yoga and how it works, because I have found, being myself trained as an engineer, that some of these analogies stick in my mind. And the premise of Kriya is understood. Yogananda used to say, if you want to know about the spiritual path, one of the first things you should do is analyze the state of sleep. Because he said sleep was not just given to us so that we may rest, but it provides hints, one, to the nature of creation, and two, to how we can withdraw our consciousness from this creation also. The first part about the nature of creation is a part of another topic which we can't go into today. But the second part is very, very valid, very, very important for us to understand, because it shows us what Kriya Yoga might be able to do with deep enough practice, which is withdrawing the life force from the five senses. What we do in sleep, we can do in actuality when we are in the conscious realm, if we can master the laws, which is what Kriya teaches us. In sleep, we withdraw life force from our five senses. Halfway through. It's not completely withdrawn, but it's dimmed. A simple example, which I again often give people, is if you're fast asleep, you won't hear the alarm go off because life force has withdrawn from your sense of hearing. If you're really in sound sleep, somebody might tap you and you won't wake up. You have to be shaken awake. That's because life force has withdrawn from the sense of touch. Try this, and don't say, I asked you to try this, because your spouse will probably be angry if it doesn't work. Try tickling the feet of your spouse when they are sleeping. I suspect they won't feel it. If they're awake, they'll immediately feel it. But not if they are asleep. Unless they are very light sleeper. A light sleeper can't disconnect so well from the five senses. That's why wakes up if there's a minor disturbance. The reason I'm saying this is it's nice to know these things are possible. When we go into the subconscious, life force automatically starts withdrawing back into the spine. So it can be done. The whole goal of yoga is to do what's done subconsciously, consciously, as an act of will. This is where Kriya Yoga is so powerful. By practicing it more and more deeply, one of the great blessings everybody will feel is you can meditate anywhere. Your surroundings won't matter so much. It can be a noisy surrounding, it can be a calm surrounding, because you see that you can start pulling your energy and focus inwards. Those who can do it completely reverse death, which is what Lahiri Mahashaya's Mahasamadhi is about. He knew when he was going to pass. It was no mystery to him. It was a joyful experience because he always knew he was spirit and he was going back to his native state of being. He had fulfilled his role on this planet. Complete surrender, complete victory. But because we are talking about the science of yoga, primarily because Lahiri Mahashaya was a yoga avatar. Yogananda said he was an incarnation of yoga. One of his great contributions was to make yoga clear, practicable for all who would want to, and so that people can become free, reach that state of yoga, self-realization through that practice. I have found, in surrender lies victory. This topic can be understood in many ways. Generally, it's about surrendering our will to divine will. But I want to just mention, we can also start one step before there. Learning to be in harmony with divine law. Because surrender also means harmonizing, going into the flow with something. And the divine law, I found that there are 5 main laws that govern all of creation. I'm just going to mention them very briefly. All of you know this. But these 5 laws summarize the entire science of yoga. And if you find something that I missed out, you can come tell me. I would be very interested. Because these are not exhaustive, but this is what came to my mind, which tells us why we are on the path of yoga, where we are headed, how we can get there. The first law is very nice. We are made in the image of God. Our nature is bliss. We are souls, we are divine. Our nature, being made in the image of God, is perfect joy. And anything less, that's why it doesn't satisfy us, because it's not our true nature. And that's why, unless we are self-realized, we keep seeking, whether we know it or not. So the first law is we are made in the image of God. The second law is this world is based on the law of duality. Pluses and minuses keep coming in succession. There's no constancy of bliss outwards. There's no constancy of suffering outwards. And after some time, we get tired of bouncing up and down. And we start wanting to reach that still place of divine joy which can never be taken away. That's the second law, the law of duality. The third law is the law of karma. As you sow, so shall you reap. We are responsible for how we act, and we are taught that responsibility. The law of karma teaches us responsibility. And it's not a good law or a bad law. It depends. See, for a good student, the teacher is a good thing. For a truant, they don't want the teacher, because you'll get punished. But the reason I'm saying this is if we know how these principles work, we can work in harmony with divine laws. And we see that it's all light, love, and joy. So the law of karma helps us to gradually understand how to live. And that process can be a little painful, but the end result is nice. We learn how to live right in joy, in bliss, and in a way that we can give others joy and bliss also. If we were allowed to run errand, we would be a very big nuisance to other people. Think about your spouses, your co-workers, your employees. The law of karma is a nice check which prevents us from doing wrong for too long. So that's the third law. And the fourth one is self-realization comes by attunement with a guru. This is a tricky one, and we have an entire class that talks about this law, but Yogananda said, we have to do our seeking. We have to try to find the divine to the best of our ability. And as we do that, we are automatically led to a soul who has made that journey himself or herself and who can take us to that goal. And that is the Guru. The Guru stays with us until we complete the journey. He's there on our side. And then the final law is one which is probably most important for all of us at the station of life we are in today, which is environment is stronger than willpower. And so, the reason I say this is everybody here, whether you're on this path or not, some understanding is there that our true nature, we are a soul, the first law. Some understanding is there based on life's experiences that life is full of ups and downs. We understand the law of karma. And all of you, whether you feel the need for a guru or not, the need for guidance is felt. You can't get there by self-effort alone. It's the fifth law that makes us successful or not in harmonizing us with all these other laws. Environment is stronger than willpower. I have found in my own life, I've been with Ananda for 12 years now, which is not a big time. I used to be right at the top in India when I was there. If I said I was with Ananda 12 years, people would be like, wow, you are so senior. You saw Swami Kriyananda? You got to spend a few minutes with him? How blessed you are. Because Swamiji only came to India in the last years of his life. So if you got to see him, you are considered a senior disciple, quote unquote. But that's not the situation here. I've only been with Ananda 12 years. But the reason I say this is I have found what has helped me the most on the spiritual path is not my brain power, is not my studiousness, is not my will, is not my clear understanding of the teachings. All of those are good to have in the extent that we can, but it's being in the right environment. If you are with the right kind of people, it's very hard not to keep marching towards freedom. Very, very hard, because there's a group energy there. Just as if you're caught in a current, you can't swim against the current forever. The law is that eventually the current always wins. The swimmer can never win against a current. He can get out of it if possible, but you can swim against the current just for a few minutes or half an hour. Same on the spiritual path. If we find the right support for our journey, automatically we start learning what surrender means. Automatically we start learning what victory means. Sometimes those things that come across to us as victories, wow, I won that argument. I am so good at giving back as good as I get. We realize that wasn't a victory, maybe. That was actually a surrender of the wrong kind. We surrendered to our lower self just by exploding when we should have practiced self-control. But all those refinements come to us more and more by being with living examples of those qualities. So the reason I wanted to end with that is it's a great joy that a place such as Ananda Palo Alto and many others, places which are not necessarily Ananda even, they exist because they allow people to come and strengthen their magnetism. And I wanted to end by reading this particular letter Yogananda wrote, where he talked about this principle. This was written in 1950-something, or 1950 itself, to the group, the SRF group in Sydney, in Australia. Some enterprising bunch of Australians had come together and started a meditation group. And it was very hard. Imagine Australia in the 1950s. There was no Zoom. I don't know if there was long-distance telephone call. Everything had to be through letters. So it took a lot of enterprising efforts to get that meditation group going there. And Yogananda responded with a very sweet letter. I want to read it for all of us. Dear ones, I understand that a new group has started in your city through the efforts and work of you good souls. I rejoice upon learning this, for it was my master's wish, Babaji Lahiri Mahashaya Sri Yukteswar, that the self-realization message spread all over the world. You are doing your part in helping their wish to materialize, for they are working through you in thought, thus guiding your actions. It was these masters in whom the same divine consciousness that was in Christ is manifest, and in whose spirit I dwell, who sent me to America to be instrumental in spreading their message to those who hunger for the love of God. I went from temple to temple in India, from church to church, from creed to creed. But none gave me the spiritual satisfaction I was looking for. It was through my beloved Guru Sri Yukteswar Ji that I found the love of God who guided me in my practice of Kriya Yoga. It makes me happy to learn that you, faithful few, hunger for His infinite love also. You are sent on this plane of life to achieve His bountiful love and to serve Him selflessly. This is the only way to liberation, the only way to real happiness. Work for God and meditate about Him every night. During group meetings, meditate with the group members, and when at home, meditate alone or with any other devotee seeking God. Lahiri Mahashaya always stressed group meditation and association with other devotees following the spiritual path. Associating with people seeking God will strengthen your individual desire to find Him. Meditating with other people will uplift you in times of spiritual void. This is why group and center work is most necessary in spreading my Master's work. If in any way I can be of service to any of you, please write me, requesting help. I shall look forward to hearing from you. Please know that I am with all of you in spirit, regardless of time and distance. God bless you, and may you reap the rich harvest of self-realization in this season of your life with unceasing blessings. Very sincerely yours, Paramhansa Yogananda. Many blessings.
If you're seeking freedom in a revolution, oh, if you're seeking freedom, you won't find it there. For once the guns stop blazing, you'll find it amazing how the world can drag on just as before. If you're seeking freedom in a marble mansion, oh, if you're seeking freedom, you won't find it there. For even when it's sunny, you'll be counting money, keeping up that showcase your face lined with care. And if you're seeking freedom on a throne of power, oh, if you're seeking freedom, you won't find it there. For though men all obey you, what if they betray you? Tense you'll be and waiting for foes everywhere. But if you're seeking freedom, cast away desires, why barter like a beggar? You've wealth everywhere. For never can you buy it, grasp and you'll deny it. Freedom can't be hoarded, it's free as the air. And if you're seeking freedom, seek it on the mountains. Got sunlight on your shoulders, the wind in your hair. For there's no one can hold you, boss about or mold you. Once your heart is free,